Welcome back to the Generating Pine Bluff podcast, or welcome to the podcast if you've never been here before. Today, we have someone very, very special who's going to talk to us about entrepreneurship in our community. She can give you good advice and sound business acumen from the beginning to the end of starting a business and beyond. She can help you move along as well. Don't go away, you're going to want to meet her. I'm Donna Riles, Interim Director here at the Generator in Pine Bluff, 435 Main. Come on by if you haven't been here before. And today's podcast, of course, is about entrepreneurship. And with us is Pamela Reed of Communities Unlimited. Hi, Pam.
Hey, how you doing, Donna? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, especially on this chilly day, right?
I know. Very cold, very cold. It took a while to get started and get out of the house.
I agree. So let's get right into it. Tell me, who is Pam Reed?
So it's so interesting. You know, it's a pleasure to be here today. For one, working in the Pine Bluff community is, it feels like me getting back to my roots in more ways than one. I was born at Jefferson County Hospital, for one. And then now my father and his wife still lives here. My sister, her husband, and her children still live here. And I have an uncle and a few other people. And so I have a lot of roots in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. So I can say it's close to my heart when it comes to doing work here. I have been working in the small business development field for about the past 8 years. I started off at the ASBTDC, kind of helping them with training. I moved to the Venture Center.
What is that? Give that again, the initials, and tell us what that is.
I know some people call it alphabet soup, but the ASBTDC is the Arkansas Small Business and Technology Development Center, and they have worked a little bit in this area as well. I was actually working as an inclusion and diversity specialist when they started to make the move into Pine Bluff and working with UAPB and that sort of thing. But then I moved over to the Venture Center, where I got a lot of experience working with technology companies, and this whole idea of mentorship and cohorts were very, very important in that role. And I got a chance to work on some large events and work with entrepreneurs that were at a different stage of the business for themselves. And then now I'm at the Arkansas MBDA Business Center, which is the Minority Business Development Agency. It is powered by Communities Unlimited. So technically I am employed by Communities Unlimited. But the work that we do at the MBDA Business Center, it is traditionally focused on serving people that have been underrepresented, repressed as a result of their cultural background and their ethnicity. So we're talking about African Americans, Native Americans, Asian, Pacific Islander Americans, and Jews, and those sorts of folks. And today now, though, we changed that a little bit as a result of a recent lawsuit. We help all socially and economically disadvantaged individuals, and as you know, it doesn't matter what color you are, if you can get certified as socially and economically disadvantaged. And we help them with acquiring, I say all of the work that I've done, all of it for the past 8 years, is really about closing the wealth gap. It is about trying to level the playing field, and we've done that just by starting a business and being able to sustain it, to get access to capital, all of those things. And so the space that I'm in now, it primarily focuses on how do we get you to the contracts. So, getting into that space with contracts means that, I might be a cleaning company now. How do I go and get a contract with potentially a Kroger or some other company, so there's a contract piece. But then the difference in that is that instead of you going, B2B, instead of you going B2C directly to the customer, you're going B2B. Gotcha. And so that changes the amount of money in the wealth
business to business. Perfect. So I'm loving hearing that you have these personal ties to Pine Bluff.
Yes.
Because we love Pine Bluff, of course, but not everybody does. So I love hearing that you have that personal connection here. I've seen you at lots of events around town, making an effort to help those people who want to go into business. We've had some events here, one that particularly that was several weeks long for people wanting to start a business and needing information. Looking forward to doing that again with you
Yes, me too.
in the near future. But what I want to know is, what do you consider, what Pine Bluff has to offer? What do you consider the best attributes for business that Pine Bluff has to offer?
So it's interesting that you say this, because I feel like, you know, that person that's on the outside looking in for years. And one of the arguments that I have had for a very long time is, why has Pine Bluff not created a massive branding campaign? Because a massive branding campaign would really counteract this narrative that the city is riddled with crime.
Right.
And it keeps businesses out. It makes people fly, leave, go live into other spaces. And so you lose a lot of your talent. You lose a lot of, the economic ability and all of those things.
And we want our citizens who are here to spend in Pine Bluff.
Exactly. And so, the ability, from when I was a kid, honestly, I think there were probably 2 restaurants, Big Banjo and something else is all I can remember. And now, so driving around and seeing all of the restaurants and all of the people, all of those things, busy popping up, it gives me hope. And I know that some of that has to do with the economic interest because of the casino. But I think Pine Bluff, unlike a lot of rural cities in Arkansas, they have probably more industry. They have more industry still to work with. And I think that a lot of the other entrepreneurship support organizations and those that are interested in Pine Bluff know that. Yeah. And now, so it's a matter of, how do you change the story? How do you start to utilize the skills of the students at UAPB so that they don't want to leave, that they want to stay home and invest? So that means now, how do you make sure they have things that allow for them to live out the quality of life that they believe in? They want to go out and eat. They want to be able to go have a drink with their friends. They want to take their kids to the park. They want to be able to have access to shopping. They want to be able to do all of the leisure things that say, I am living well. So I feel like Pine Bluff is a fertile ground to be able to bring those things in. Yeah. And so entrepreneurship is so important, I guess, in terms of just looking at the population. If I'm not mistaken, it's majority African American here, correct? Which that story of crime tends to go along with that, unfortunately. But when we start looking at the ability to acquire long-term wealth, entrepreneurship is so much more effective at doing that than getting a job. There's nothing wrong with getting a job, you know what I mean? Like, I often tell entrepreneurs, keep your job to help fund this dream over here, which can help you create long-term generational wealth. So, but I think that starting a business and knowing that you have young people and you've got people who have been attracted to this area because of the 3 or 4 big industries you have. And you might have to help me out. You got UAPB, you got the casino, you had Simmons Bank, or is it
still do?
We got Simmons Bank.
The headquarters is in Little Rock, but it began in Pine Bluff.
Exactly.
Right across the street.
So you've got that historical piece. And then
JRMC is a major employer.
Okay. And then what about the Arsenal? Is it still going?
Not in the way that it has in the past.
Okay.
But we have a couple paper mills. We have some industry here in Pine Bluff, for sure. But I'm going to date myself. I'm going to go back to something you said a little bit earlier about restaurants and businesses and whatnot. It depends on how old you are, where you are generationally. I can remember Pine Bluff being a very vibrant, bustling town with many, many places to shop and eat. Some were chain. A lot of it was connected with the mall that we had, but we still have nothing but dealers there now, but there's so much space. There was a thriving mall there at one time. We had lots of businesses on Main Street. My first job was at Kitty's Shoe Store. There were bakers downtown. There were lots of different things, drugstores. They used to call them 10-cent stores when I was a kid, where you could just go in and get little things. A drugstore. There was also a hardware store. So many things right here from one end of Main Street to the other. The shopping center at Olive Street was thriving as well. So I grew up in a bustling Pine Bluff. That's why it's so exciting as it is for you to see so many things happening now. But we need to work together.
We definitely have to work together. And I know there's a lot of historical factors to Pine Bluff, the economic pieces that surround, the community thriving and so forth. I just want to put a pin in one little point on that. When I was coming up, a lot of those businesses that you're talking about on Main Street were in a decline. I do remember seeing Rich's. I used to get a chance to go there a lot with my grandparents and stuff. But the community was a little bit closer to being an agrarian community. And some of that wealth was able to, fuel that growth. Now you've got people who have moved away from that and they want to live a little different. So now that they're hoping to live different, what does it look like? And I think there's so much opportunity to start small businesses. Not get pigeonholed by, this is a low barrier to entry. Everybody in my family can cook. I'm just going to go start a chicken restaurant. You know what I mean? Don't get pigeonholed by that. People still need cleaners. They still need all of the other things. Yeah, shoe repair, all of those things. So if that is your calling, if those are the things that you're good at, find a niche, find the right way to get in contact with the target customer, start those businesses so that the community can serve itself, keep that dollar communicating and moving around and circulating long enough that everybody wins. But that working together piece is what is the most important part.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about what you do with MBDA.
Well, MBDA, it really does have a goal of helping businesses access more capital or just capital in general, contracts, whether they be with public corporations, with public institutions or private corporations, such as a Tyson or a Kroger or somebody like that. We want to help them also to move into new markets. And sometimes moving into new markets can mean expansion, but then it can also mean exporting and going overseas. If you expand within your current community, you might be starting a new product or service, or you might go after a different target customer. So we're providing technical assistance for the most part. And most of our technical assistance is finance-based, and I think that's what sets us apart from a lot of the other ESOs claiming to do the same work. We're going to actually ask you for your W-2s and the financial statements of your business and comb through those to look for opportunities and to help you to learn better how to manage that, to make finance-based decisions about your business. So it has long-term benefit in helping your dollar go farther, but then also just in you understanding, having the knowledge and knowing how to make decisions to sustain yourself as a business owner. So we provide that technical assistance, and then we work with a community of partners. Like you all are one of our partners. We work with Apex. We try to work with the state of Arkansas. We try to work with a lot of other groups that can help the entrepreneurs that we serve, which remember are socially and economically disadvantaged individuals in most cases, to be able to acquire some of those contracts, some of those larger contracts that are going to help them create wealth.
Okay, so just to get an idea of how this works, let's pretend I want to start a business.
Okay.
What do I do first to make contact with you?
If you want to start a business, if you're at the ideation phase, it kind of depends on where you are. Because if you're at that phase where you see a gap in the market and you know that you can meet the needs of a group of customers because these needs are not being met, you say, well, I think I'll start a business. And that first, immediately I would say you want to do one or two things. You want to start to probably do some market research on your own. That means you can get on the internet and just kind of search and just see who your competitors are in the area. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to start that, shoe repair business that we talked about, who's repairing shoes right now in Pine Bluff? Okay, this competition, this is the competition I have, including the people that might be online that are providing a service. Okay, now, how do they provide this service and how much does this service cost? Because you want to start looking at all of those things to see, is it really feasible for me to start this type of business in the area? Once you kind of have done your own little research, to me, the next best thing to do is to really connect with an organization like yours. Some of that foundational information in starting a business, I'll call them the 3 M's. You want your money, your management, and your marketing. That tripod is going to be extremely important in determining whether or not your business can make you money or have any profit at all. And so when you work with the generator or you work with the Arkansas Small Business and Technology Development Center, when you work with us at Communities Unlimited, we can help you learn the skills needed to operate the business efficiently. Mm-hmm. So I would connect with an entrepreneurship support organization. I forgot about Remix Ideas. Mm-hmm. Benito is really, really great
Absolutely.
too with the work that he's doing. But get that foundational information that you need. And then the next thing you would do is create a business plan. Mm-hmm. Now I've heard two different things. People say, oh, you can use the Canvas or the business plan. And I'm thinking, no, I feel like one feeds the other and they have different purposes.
Do you all help with the business plan?
We can help with the business plan, and we can help guide you through creating a business model canvas just to identify all of the different interconnections of pieces for your
But I
business.
could come to you with a business plan.
You could.
Okay.
If you came to us with a business plan, we would help you refine that if it needs it. Mm-hmm. And often we work with market research, and so we have reports on the industries that we can provide you with more information on how you can kind of really, really develop your concepts and ideas for the business itself. So once you get to us, then, if you've been in business for a couple of years, and really have worked out a lot of those smaller details, filed your taxes, that sort of thing, then you can work with an organization. You're more likely to get accepted by an organization to get technical assistance to facilitate contracts.
Is there any cost to this assistance?
There is zero cost for the foundational entrepreneurship work we do. There's a zero cost for the technical assistance for contracting help.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it really is wonderful. And I tell people this, you have to remember agencies like the Arkansas MBDA Business Center or the National MBDA Business, they're funded by your tax dollars. Mm-hmm. So free is kind of relative. You're kind of paying for it in a roundabout way. And if you're going into business, you know that if you put money into something, you want to get a return on your investment. So take advantage of the free resources that are available, especially from the grant funded organizations, if they're not asking for a fee.
So let's talk a little bit more about what's offered through the entrepreneurship department. Mm-hmm. One of the things, I'm going to go through these things that I found some information about, and you give me your take on it. So what's listed as what's empowering small businesses through MBDA is expertise. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about the expertise that's available.
So, wow. I mean, one thing that stands out to me, is that finance-based technical assistance piece. Mm-hmm. I will mention one person on our staff, and that is Mr. Marnell Love, mm-hmm. Dr. Marnell Love, rather. He has been an accountant a CPA for over 30 years. Mm-hmm. And so he is our lead consultant for MBDA clients, and he has a team of about 3 that he has trained and that he works with to provide those services for MBDA contract-specific projections and accounting. Often what will happen is a business will say, hey, this great opportunity is out here. I'd like to be able to bid on it. But then when we start looking at, we get a little closer to looking at the finances and the management and the operations, sometimes they're not ready.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the work that we do is trying to get them ready to be ready, because those opportunities are going to keep coming up. We knew with the Biden administration that the infrastructure was really important. We knew that solar, some of the renewable energy and sustainable energy was really, really important. But now that we've got a new administration in, we know that some of that might be going away. So you have to look at, just be on trend and up on the news about what's coming, because it makes a difference. Having a relationship with people at those organizations, I know it's interesting, because it's like, I know when I'm marketing my product to a customer, I could do it this way. But how do I market my product to another business? Because it gets a little more complicated, because now we're going from, hey, let me just tell you about how I can meet all your needs, to building a relationship using something like a net promoter score and bombarding them with marketing and promotion material. Okay, when we're talking about doing business with another business or even the government, that turns into something else. So now I'm forced to create better networks and relationships, because most of the people that get contracts, it is because they have networks and relationships, and they've built that up over time. So the marketing isn't just, let me go on social media, let me just go on the news, or whatever the case may be. My marketing comes from you, because you might already have a relationship with the Department of Defense, and maybe I subcontract with you, and now the Department of Defense knows me as well. So the marketing is a little bit different. It's a relationship game, and understanding that, business in general is a relationship game, but when it comes to the level of contracting, you have to change your mindset.
So next, I was going to ask you about personalized support, but I think that led right into it as you kept talking about that. I think that's next. And then what about proven success?
So elaborate. What do you mean proven success?
So your team. Proven success is one of the attributes that you offer through the program. Can you talk a little bit about that? People that have come through the program and have seen some success from being a part of it.
Right.
I know two people right here in Pine Bluff, Decorus and Jeff Collins, who has a technology business.
And then one going a little bit further south is the White family in Sunlight Services. And and it's interesting, because I was at a SBA event last year, I think it was, and just kind of met them on the whim, and we started talking, and they mentioned that they were trying to do something with dump trucks, and I think they may have had one at the time. And when they started working with us, people always get put off a little bit about, hey, we want your tax returns, and then we want all of your financial documents, because often when you're a small business owner, you get a chance to manage yourself, you're just putting out fires, doing what needs to be done. You are not sitting down every Sunday and making sure everything is in balance. So for them, they were put off a little bit, but then eventually we got them to a place where they were able to acquire $84,000 loan, and they have since added about 20 more trucks. And this is the dump trucking business. So, that means he had to rely on contracts, but that additional money helped him to be able to fulfill more work in the area, because he mentioned that there was a gap. And some of these stories like this are on our website.
I know. That's one of the great things about the website.
Exactly.
The testimonials. Yeah, if you want to see someone who's working to get to where you want to go to the Communities Unlimited Entrepreneurship Department website and look at some of those testimonies. Very inspirational. Probably see somebody you know.
Totally agree.
What about value creation?
Yeah, so, I think that a lot of that comes through the capacity building, and then also the work that we're doing around the financial piece. You know, a lot of people shy away from numbers, and it can get hard, and sometimes it's confusing. But I think we create value through that process because they're able to really, really start to make decisions in a way that they didn't before. You know, a lot of us come into the space with the values that, we brought from home. So we saw, Grandpa running the business and he looked like he was doing just fine. So we do the same thing when, really to up the game, to really, really be able to reach a different target group of customers, you might have to communicate a little different, and you might have to show up with some different things in order. And so that's one way we create value. Other ways that we create value really is that a lot of the entrepreneurs we serve, we see an increase in their revenues. We see about a 25% increase in their revenues. Not every one of them hires another employee, but often, they're able to bring on one or two other people, that kind of thing. And then I think that just the relationship in general, knowing that you can pick up the phone and call somebody at any point with a question about your business adds value as well. So it's like a yin and yang kind of circle with a lot of things moving around, and at the same time creating some basic value systems.
Yeah, and so as a business owner, you want to bring value to the community with your business. It probably will help to ensure that it gets off on the right foot and continues to grow. And what could be value for your business from your business would be different from someone else.
That's so true.
That's part of that personalized service that you offer to make people take a look and recognize where they could bring value in their business.
Right, and that's one of the first things that we do, is we try to establish, we think we see what you need based on the information you provide us, but what do you want to take away from this scenario? Like you said, the value, it's very, very specific, it's very, very personalized, and we hear from the entrepreneurs, and we work with them. We collaborate.
So one of the most important things, in my opinion, about going into business is finance, if not the most important. And so often people shy away from saying that they want to make money. But that's all a part of being a business owner, generating revenue, making money, holding on to that money. So that financial piece. Let's talk about that. I mean, I know it can be difficult getting a business off the ground, and it may suck a lot of your resources into the business. So talk to us about being financially sound, how to start off on the right foot and maintain sound business practices, giving yourself the best opportunity to grow.
Right. So, it's like I mentioned before, I think some people, it gets a little bit easier to start a business for some than others. So for example, if I'm a husband and wife team and my husband but has a full-time job and I want to do something part-time, we've got the money to cover the bills. So I don't have to both try to make money with the business and then live off the business.
Yes.
And so I see a lot of entrepreneurs, they, get a little zealous, and it looks like a lot of money is coming in, so they want to quit their job. But at the end of the day, when all of those expenses come out at the end of the year, you might see that you only made $15,000. Now, if I can get paid $50,000 on my job, to me that's a no-brainer. You know what I mean? You got to figure out what that balance is, and so I think that entrepreneurs need to make sure that they have money to fuel the business when they start, and they need to think about that before they leave employment or whatever, based on whatever their situation is. And I think that if they are able, try not to take money from the business the first 3 years.
3 years?
If they're able. And the reason I said that is because you're still trying to find out your target market. You're still trying to get to know them a little bit. You're still trying to create your systems and processes. you're still trying to figure out how to manage everything and who should be in the right places to manage what. And a lot of those things are fluctuating and moving and changing and creating additional expenses right along with it. And I think that if you can do that, then you have a better chance of surviving long term.
How important is it to separate finances?
Oh my
your
gosh.
business and your personal.
Oh my gosh. It's so important to make sure you keep those two things separate, because if you start treating the money that's coming into the business like it's your own pot and not paying yourself, it has some implications when you get to your
So
taxes.
you need to be on the payroll even though you own the business.
Exactly. You either take an owner's draw or you get on the payroll, and depending on how your business is set up, you might have you might be a solo entrepreneur, sole proprietor rather, or you might have an LLC, which a lot of people do these days, or be in a partnership, whatever the case may be. It just works out better from a tax purpose. For tax purposes, to go ahead and either pay yourself as a W-2 employee or create an owner's draw, because there needs to be a track of where the money is going. Because the other thing that I've seen happen, my mom was a beautician, my grandmother was a beautician, my sister's a beautician, like I'm from a long line of beauticians, and so for years, some of them wanted to live under the radar, but then when it comes to having the buying power, to go get the things that you need, a house, a car, it becomes difficult because you don't show any income on your W-2 statement. So when it comes to paying yourself, you want, at the end of the year, or whenever you're doing your quarterly, or whenever you're shoring up everything, you want to make sure that the story is working in your benefit.
Yes.
And it's very difficult to do that if you have your personal finances commingled.
Great advice. So I want to ask you about contract readiness. So you all teach people how to take what they're doing in their business, whether it be goods or services, and enter into agreement, contract with other businesses. Yes?
So basically, that's part of what we do with the technical assistance. We also do, some strategy and growth planning, that kind of thing, and just to make sure that the entrepreneur understands where they're trying to go and the steps that it's going to need to take for them to go there. And so when it comes to that technical assistance for the contracting, yes, and some industries are driven by contracts. So, even though I said be in business for 2 years, there are some out the gate, like professional services. If I said I wanted to offer consulting services to DHS or something like that, and I could be a brand new business, I would have to have a contract to do that. But what is DHS going to require? You know what I mean? So the ability to understand those requests for proposal, those different unsolicited proposals that might be a factor as well, and then other types of inquiries is one of the pieces where we stand out as experts. We're going to teach you those most important aspects of what the government is wanting to hear from you, or whether what that corporation wants to hear from you. Because we could show up with the best product, the best service in the world, but again, if we're not telling that story the way that they want to receive it, it's kind of like if you were having a discussion with your child, or with your husband. People get used to getting information in a certain kind of way. And if you want to get on the same page with it, then you have to learn how to do that. And so that's one of the things we teach you to do is learn how to respond to those, and what type of criteria and other information, like your capability statement, for example. You might have to have some financial projections. They may request that you talk about a little bit about your operations, how much you're going to spend on products to fulfill this particular contract. And we want to be able to explain all of that to you.
So let's take a for
chances of success.
For instance, I am a great cake maker, and I make these fantastic, beautiful cakes. I want to sell my cakes to the casino in Pablo for the restaurant. How would you take a person through that process? First of all, do they need to know what is expected of a vendor at the casino, and then what?
Yes, they need to do a little, and this is that market research piece we talked about. I would sit down and do some basic, hey, how do I get my product in this space or in the casino? And then find out specifically about the one that you're trying to get into. You then might find out even if there's some regulations from the state of Arkansas about preparation and food safety and that sort of thing. You find out whether or not that casino requires you to have any type of packaging, special types of packaging, so that they can store it for a period of time. Like there are a lot of little bitty things that you're going to want to know. But like you're right. The first thing you'll want to do is to try to figure out, how do I become a vendor, and then who are they working with today? So when you find out those things and who they're working with today and how much they're charging, now you're in a position to say, I can come in and bring you this product at this cost. Now, if you know the finances of your business, you know whether or not you can undercut XYZ with the cakes, right? You know whether or not, your product has a way of standing out in one way or another. And so that's why that market research is really important. That's why spending some time on the website, learning what's required of you by the vendor is extremely important. And then knowing the language too. And that's what we do. We interpret language a lot in that process. And so they may, the restaurant might require that they, use Benny Keith as a third-party provider for the service, and so they'll need to go through and learn all of Benny Keith's processes to try to get vetted. And so it might be a long and kind of, not straight line, but winding process, but they may have a chance of getting in if they get into Benny Keith. I knew one lady, she provided a cheesecake product years ago when I, in Little Rock. And I want to use her as the perfect example, because I think sometimes we have a product, it just seems so small and so insignificant, we don't know where to begin. But she began by making an agreement with Sharks, those Sharks restaurants in Little Rock, to put her cheesecake in their stores. And it was just a matter of negotiating. She did it one by one by one, and eventually I think she had her product in probably about 5 or 10 Sharks in the Central Arkansas area. And so at some point when she started working with the organization that I was with at the time, she wanted to move and expand into different areas. Now, she may have had to use some sort of distributor, but that wasn't something that she told us about. But I'm sure that will come up in some conversations. But she ended up getting her cheesecake in the Benny Keith, and the last time, I think it was in the 18 whatever restaurant, I don't remember, it was out on Rodney Parham, but it was a high-end restaurant. But she was able to get her cheesecake in there, but she started really, really small by creating those contracts and those agreements with those Sharks restaurants. And now, when I'm walking around the mall some days, I see that she has a whole cheesecake vending machine in there, and she has a storefront that sells kind of different types of cheesecake treats and that kind of thing. So I think sometimes you have to start small depending on where you are, and then depending on who in some cases you can start to make a bigger splash, but because you need to get into the market a different way. But again, it goes back to that relationship. Her going to each one of those Sharks restaurants was about building a relationship, and then eventually she came to that organization, and then we suggested building her relationship in a different way, and it's paid off.
Good model to follow. So it's 2025.
Yes.
Can you believe it? It's 2025. So what do you have in store for Pine Bluff and our community from your organization?
Yes. So, Communities Unlimited, which is, the Arkansas MBDA Business Center is powered by the Communities Unlimited group. And we have several departments, like everything from healthy foods to the housing to environmental wastewater to, our community sustainability programs. Like, we have a lot of programs. And I don't know if you've heard from our housing department or our environmental department, but they, wanted to come and connect with you as well. Yes. But the thing about it is that we are really, our goal is to have a comprehensive approach as it relates to community in general. And so we will be in Pine Bluff and surrounding areas working on everything from housing to environmental and wastewater and that sort of thing. So as it relates to business, we do plan to come back. We like to do a capital readiness cohort and partner with some organizations here as well as you all to make that happen. We do want to do another entrepreneurship cohort, either here in Pine Bluff or in surrounding areas. And as it relates to NVDA, we are still working with different organizations. I know that we have partnered with the Pine Bluff Black Chamber of Commerce, and then we plan on creating more partnerships to make sure that when entrepreneurs are ready, that we can kind of help them to take that leap into contracting work as well.
Yeah, we look forward to it.
Oh yeah, I think it's going to be great. I see a lot of opportunity, and I look forward to being a part of it.
We see that opportunity as well in Pine Bluff. Any last words you want to say to folks on the podcast? Any words of encouragement for 2025? We don't really know what's going to make an impact for entrepreneurs just yet. There was a celebration recently for a new administration for our national government. So we don't know what's going to change. If there are changes, there usually are a few when there's a new administration. But what would you say is steady and that they should keep their eyes on in starting a new business here in Pine Bluff?
Yeah, I think that access to capital will continue to be a thing. Like I've seen bipartisan positions as it relates to making sure that small businesses have access to the money they need to keep economics thriving here in the U.S. And so I don't think that will change with the current administration. So I think that people will still have conversations about how do we get some of this money into the hands of people who haven't traditionally had it. And my other thing on that, those are two things that I think won't change. But I want to also remind people of, something that's really, really important in business. And the term, I got it out the mud, comes to mind. Because there's a certain amount of perseverance and grit that it takes to really, really make it. There is a certain amount of creativity that is important to really, really make it. Because when you don't have a whole lot of money to just throw at something, sometimes you got to get creative on how you're going to make it happen. And I feel like if anybody, in the world has that, it's people who have been economically starved.
For sure.
So keep that same grit. Access to capital is not the end all be all. It's going to be important. But the relationship piece, the understanding of building your capacity piece and having the ability to do that and want the desire to do that is going to be extremely important. So that's what I would say on that end.
Well, thank you for those words.
Yeah.
We're so happy to have you here and looking forward to working with you more in our community here at the Generator as well. So keep up with us on Facebook, all of our social media platforms, and this podcast to find out when you can meet up with this young lady. And she's going to give you her contact information so you can reach out to her directly. But keep an eye out for when we will be back at the Generator with another entrepreneurship class.
Yes, and so if you'd like to reach out to me, my phone number is 479-387-7564, and that was 479-387-7564, or you can email me at pam.reed@communitiesu, the letter U, not YOU, but at communitiesu.org.